Welcome everyone to a deck tech video about Jeskai Control. Here's the list here. I actually pulled this list off the internet. This is not my list. This is a top 4 deck list, I think, from a recent tournament, but it's just before Ravnica Allegiance came out, so I thought we'd have a look at the list, talk a little bit about it, and then have a look at maybe how we could evolve this for Ravnica Allegiance. So, this deck is quite frankly anti-creature deck, if you look at it. It's got 2 Seal Aways, 2 Lava Coils, 4 Deafening Clarions to settle the wreckage, and a Cleansing Nova, all to get rid of your opponent's board. So how does this deck even win, you wonder? When you look at this, there's no creatures in here. How does this win? Well, there's a couple of ways it can win. It can win with a Raw Izzet. If you get an emblem off, you have whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, this emblem deals 4 damage to any target and you draw 2 cards. That's one way of winning. The other way, Teferi emblem. Well, you can't win of this, but the thing is, the emblem says whenever you draw a card, exile target permanent an opponent controls, and you can draw a lot of cards, so you can pretty much exile everything your opponent has. Usually that makes the opponent scoop anyways. He is not gonna stick around to see if you actually have the win con, so that's that's like half a win there. Just it's not really, you can't really win with this, but your opponent is so likely to scoop that it's almost like a win condition. The third way is running Expansion Explosion. The explosion part can deal X damage to any target, and target player draws X cards. You can either mill your opponent, or you can deal enough damage to your opponent to kill him. And you can copy this, of course, with the Mirari's Conjecture, and you can copy it with Expansion Explosion. So you're just building up to this massive turn when you just finish off your opponent in one go, and you're controlling the board up till that state with, you know, some counters. You're not running too many counters. You have 1 Negate, an Essence Gather, a Syncopate, and 3 Sinister Sabotage. That's all you have for in the as far as counters goes. You have a little bit of life gain here as well in Revitalize, but it's not too much. So that's the thought of the deck. The rest, you know, is just card draw, Chemistry's Insight, more card advantage with Search for Azcanta, which is pretty nice synergy as well with Teferi, since you can untap Search for Azcanta with Teferi to get another use out of it. For the lands here, it's pretty standard, except this list for some reason is running 5 island. This worries me at least, because whenever I play Magic, if I ran 5 islands in a deck, I would draw 4 or 5 islands every time and not draw any other lands, and not be able to play any spells. So I'm a bit concerned about this. There's one Izzet Guildgate, which is a bit funny. I guess since he's running 4 Steamans and 4 Sulfur, there's no other lands which can produce both blue and red, so that's why he has included a Izzet Guildgate. That's a bit interesting. So that's the list. Now, how would I evolve this for, you know, the coming or the current RNA expansion? Well, the first thing I would do is take out Opt, of course, because I don't like Opt. I think Opt is just a card which doesn't do anything. If you draw it late, it's just horrible. Why not draw into the card that you need immediately? There's just scry 1, too low impact, I think. That's just personal opinion. But the actual biggest thing, this is the list that I came up with how I would change the list. I would try to merge the Revitalizes and Sinister Sabotages into 4 Absorbs. You basically get the same thing here. You get counter target spell and you gain 3 life. It's the same thing as you do here. You counter a spell and you gain 3 life. Seems good to me. I haven't tried this out yet, so I don't know. I'm just theory crafting this list. Please keep that in mind. Other things I would change. I would include Spell Pierce over Opt. I think Spell Pierce is really important now in the current metagame, especially now with Gruul. We have some Gruul enchantments. You really don't want his creatures to be uncounterable, because then you won't have any use for your absorbs. Also included 1 more Negate. Also, you know, anti-non-creature spells. There's something in every list that you want to counter. Like in white, there's the History of Benalia, and there's Ajani, and there's also in Golgari there's the Planeswalkers, and there's the Find Finality. Even in like a green elf list, which is mostly creatures, there's what's the green planeswalker, I don't remember her name. So I think there's always a use for these. I would also like to include Azor's Gateway, as I've been very impressed by this card. Having more filtering and another way to get off a huge expansion explosion, I think it's just great. It can make you win a bit earlier. It's gonna take, like if someone counters the Mirara Conjecture, it's gonna take a long time before you've assembled something that can kill your opponent. So I think that could be a great thing. Also, if you look at the mana base, something I would like to change is I would like to, instead of the 5 islands that we had here before, I would like to include some hallowed fountains, because now that we have better lands available, I think these are just going to be superior to islands, and they also help us cast the absorb more reliably. So yeah, that's the changes. There's not too much really that I would change. I think the core of this deck is pretty. Of course, you can fiddle around a little bit. Of course, you could change expansion explosion for fight with fire. That would work as well. That's another way of winning. You could change the expansion explosions for Niv Mizzet, for instance. That's another way of winning. But except for that, like the core here is pretty much the same. You can fiddle with the exact amounts, but it's about this. It's not gonna change too much with RNA, I don't think. So yeah, what do you think? What do you think about the list? Would you make anything else different? Would you change anything? Let me know.